All right, I'll give it a few seconds. Good morning, folks. How are you doing? Welcome to Prophecy Montana podcast. My name is Kerry. We have my son Levi with us, and we also have Ben Doctor with us. He's joining us remotely, live, and we are doing something a little different this morning because church has been canceled today. We have temperatures of, well, let me just show you. It is pretty frightful. Oh, how do I get on my main screen? Oops. We have temperatures of it's minus 42 right now, just in case. Minus 42 degrees. So it's pretty gamey outside. And we had to stay home. The vehicles would not start, and we have to actually get a generator going to be able to make this broadcast. And that was kind of a chore, wasn't it, Levi?
Oh yeah, that was definitely a chore yesterday. We had to we had to plug it in, jump start it, and wait, and batteries kept going dead. Yeah, it was kind of a pain.
How's
So
things over at your end, Ben? Are you guys doing okay where you're at?
Yeah, it's negative 40 over here too. I've already got a number of messages and calls about furnaces not functioning and all that jazz. But yeah,
In case nobody knows, Ben is actually the maintenance at Mount Ellis Academy, and so I'll bet you're busy as can be, especially during these cold days.
yeah.
So our lesson this morning is we're on lesson number 3. We're a week ahead. Um, for those of you guys that don't know, the Lord reigns, and we're doing the Psalms, um, the 2024 quarter of the Psalms, the first quarter of the year. And so we have a memory text here. It is Psalms 93:1. Levi, would you want to read that for me?
yeah, I just got to find it real quick. I should have been ready.
Psalms 43:1. Do you got that, Ben?
Um, Not yet.
I'm just not used to looking stuff up on my phone. Whoa.
And you said lesson 3, the Lord reigns. Is that what it is?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, it is. I'll go ahead and read it. I'll get you guys on the next one.
All right.
The Lord reigns. He is robed in majesty. The Lord is robed in majesty and armed with strength. Indeed, the world is established firm and secure. So I used to watch this guy on Loma Linda channel. No, yeah, it was a Loma Linda channel years ago. I maybe he's still on. I'm not sure. His name was Jim Burr. He used to do the Heavens Declare the Glory, and he would had all these pictures of outer space and the vastness of the heavens, and it was just amazing to watch all that. And for anybody who really knows anything about, you know, the vastness of space and how big it actually is, how else could anything like that actually have happened except there be a God? And so that's kind of what this whole lesson is about. It's about the largeness of God. It's about the uh, God, the sovereign God, the majestic God, the God the judge, God the savior, all of these things. And so that's what we're going to be studying, kind of. So the Psalms unswervingly uphold the foundational belief in God's sovereign reign. The Lord created and sustains everything that He had created. He is a sovereign King of the whole over the whole world, and He rules the world with justice and righteousness. His laws and statutes are good and bring life to those who keep them. The Lord is a just judge who ensures that the world remains well ordered, and He does so by rewarding the righteous and punishing the wicked, but in His time, not ours. Now, what do you guys think about that statement? The Lord is a just judge who ensures that the world remains well ordered, and He does so by rewarding the righteous and punishing the wicked. So I guess my question is about rewarding the righteous and punishing the wicked. I mean, does it always feel like like the righteous are rewarded? Like when you do good things, are you always, you know, treated well for that?
Almost.
Well, so what? You know, and Proverbs, I think it talks about how, the rain falls on the wicked as well as on the righteous. And in other places, it does seem like we're told that like things aren't always fair. Like the good people aren't always treated like they should be treated, and often the unrighteous are the ones who acquire the wealth and acquire the good things of life. So I'm not sure how to fit this verse in with those other ones, other than, like maybe it's situational. Maybe this verse is applying to a certain people at a certain time, kind of like a promise for them. But I don't think it's always that way.
Hey, Lisa, and could you please bring up our comments in case we have anybody that's coming right now? I can't really see the comments. We don't have our usual monitor that's up in front of us, so little going to be a little bit more tricky this morning reading comments, but we do encourage you guys to join in on the discussion as well. You know, did you have something you wanted to say about this, Levi?
Oh, I was just gonna, say that sometimes when you're rewarded, it doesn't seem like it at the moment, does it? You know what I'm saying?
The reward's
Like,
not always what we imagine it
what?
to be.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I was just kind of figuring out recently. So as a new Christian, so that's all I was gonna say.
You,
And I was gonna say, sometimes we don't know we've been rewarded. We may have been saved on the highway, driving somewhere through a blizzard, or something,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't realize that that could have been a catastrophe that was averted because we prayed, or because we said, "Oh God, be with me on this trip home. It's treacherous."
yeah, there's an old saying. It says no good deed is left unpunished. Sometimes you feel like you do good things, you're living a good life, and you get picked on, you get persecuted for that. In fact, the Bible tells us that if we're going to live godly, we're going to suffer persecution. Um, but the reward that God promises us is an eternal reward, and it's something that's bigger than we can ever imagine here on this earth in a carnal sense. A lot of times, if God was to reward us with the things that we would want to be rewarded with, it would be a detriment to us and probably for our loved ones around us. I know if God just gave me a bunch of money, my mind might not I might not be healthy mentally. I mean, and that's probably true with a lot of people. Okay, so on Sunday's lesson, let's have Ben look up. Let me see. Well, which verse are we on here? Yeah, let's go to Psalms 8, 1 through 9. And Levi, let me have you look up Psalms 100, 1 through 5. So, Ben, that's Psalms 8, 1 through 9,
Psalms
Okay.
100 through what?
100, 1 through 5.
Okay.
Hey, the watchman says there's no volume.
No volume?
That's what he said.
Oh, that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. Um,
That's what he said.
pull up the volume. We have a meter. I can see the meter going. Watchman, can you hear just us, or is it Ben that you can't hear? Anyways, well, we'll just keep going. I see the meter on the YOLO box, so I have to assume that volume's going out. Um, I'm not sure. Well, I hope we don't have that kind of a disaster. Hmm.
Should I read?
It says secondary guys got volume, but nothing at the main.
Secondary has volume.
Hmm. It says secondary guys got volume, but nothing at the main. So probably us.
So he can't hear us, but he can hear Ben.
I guess. Secondary guys got volume. Hmm.
Well, I'm glad I'm classified as a secondary guy.
Right? Let's fix that.
Well, boy. Yeah, this was kind of an experiment because we had never joined on the guest before using the YOLO that we have, our system that we have. And so it's a little bit confusing. But obviously he must have heard me because he answered. So, yeah. All right. Well, we'll just keep going, I guess. I don't know what else to do unless you can come up with a solution. So go ahead, Ben, and read yours.
Okay. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth. Who hath set thy glory above the heavens? Out of the mouth of babes and sucklings hast thou ordained strength because of thine enemies, that thou mightest still the enemy and the avenger. When I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the Son of man that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, and hast crowned him with the glory and honor. Thou madest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, yea, and the beasts of the field, the fowl of the air, and the fish of the sea, and whatsoever passeth through the paths of the sea. O Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth.
Come up like this. Very good. We're just kind of looking at this.
That's all right.
I hope that's not too loud. So I turned up the USB audio.
Okay.
All right. So hopefully that was it. We got a little bit of a reverb that we were trying to. You can turn down the headphones right there, Lisa.
It's all right.
Sorry about the technical difficulties, guys. All right. So Levi, go ahead and read Psalms 100, 1 through 5.
Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Know ye that the Lord, he is God. It is he that hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people, and the sheep of his pastures. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving, and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him, and bless his name. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth to all generations.
Okay. One thing about the majesty of God and his sovereignty, I don't know if this verse was in here, but Isaiah chapter 6 was a, what did he say there? What's the comment?
Oh, it's better.
Better. Okay, so it was our volume. All right. Thanks for the feedback, Watchman. So in Isaiah chapter 6, it talks where Isaiah came before the Lord, and he was high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple, it said. And when he spoke, the pillars were moved at the voice of him that spoke, and the whole temple was filled with smoke. And then one of the seraphims took a coal. Anyways, it describes this terrible majesty of God, and how we were talking last week about fear. I wanted to ask Ben real quick. What's your take on fear? I mean, should we fear God? I guess this question is for Levi too, because you weren't here last week either. But the question was asked: should we fear God? Is there ever a reason why we should fear God? I mean, the Bible tells us perfect love casts out all fear, but then it also tells us that we should fear Him. So, what's your guys' understanding of that?
Well, the verse that comes to my mind is I don't remember where it's at, but work out your salvation with fear and trembling. I do think fear is important, but a lot of people hear fear and they think like, oh, I'm scared. Oh, I'm terrified. And I think it's like having or the utmost respect for God, like understanding his power and his capability and who he is in relation to you. He's our creator. He's the pinnacle of everything in our existence. And with that comes a certain amount of, well, an infinite amount of respect and quote unquote fear um, that we should have in regards to God. I don't think we should be scared or worried. Not that kind of fear, but just know who he is in relation to us.
Okay. How about you, Levi?
I think fear is very important. I think as Christians, I think if we don't fear God, we don't believe in God, and that's kind of what it renders down to, you know. And we were kind of talking about this last night, weren't we? Oh, sorry, I got a cough. But yeah, we were kind of talking about this last night, and fear is very very important, especially in these last days, to read and understand His Word and get to know it. A lot of people, they they see politics nowadays and they don't want anything to do with it. I think politics are very important. I look at politics, or not only politics but the news, and I pay attention to that stuff because the closer we get to the end, the more fearful we get, and I think that's very important, and that gets us closer with Christianity as well. So
Yeah, it's interesting. The fear I have of God actually changed over time. I don't have. I used to not have fear of God. I used to have a fear of the world and the events and what's all going to take place. I don't fear that anymore, but I do fear the majesty and the judgments of God. Did
Yeah, I'm going to read
yeah,
what the Watchman says. Well, I wanted to say, I fear that I'm not ready, that I am undone. That's my fear, and that if God should come, or catastrophes should be there, am I ready to pass away or die?
that's a big fear of mine too as well.
So the Watchman says you should fear God in a fatherly way because you could receive harsh judgment. And they put Philippians 2 verse 12 and Proverbs 9 verse 10.
look up Philippians. That's a curious. Um,
2:12.
yeah, Philippians 2:12. Okay, and I'll continue to read on here in the lesson. It says creation plays a crucial role in Psalms and the upholding God's sovereignty. The heavens, which are His handiwork, proclaim His glory and power. That's what I was talking about, that program. If you guys could ever go, maybe he's got some stuff on YouTube. I haven't checked it out, but if you guys could check out Jim Burr, I think he used to come on Loma Linda or the Hope channel. That's what it was, and he used to do the heavens declare His glory on there, and it was really a fantastic program. Okay, several Psalms portray God's power over the forces in nature that other nations believe to be divine. That's curious. Okay, let me read that again. Several Psalms portray God's power over the forces in nature that other nations believe to be divine. So I guess would that be? Well, I'll look up this one. This one's actually Psalms 29, 1 through 11. I'll read the first few verses. Ascribe to the Lord, you heavenly beings. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due His name. Worship the Lord in the splendor of His holiness. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord thunders. Oh, wait a minute. I've got to load the rest of this. Hang on a sec. Yeah. So the voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The Lord thunders over the mighty waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is majestic. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. The Lord breaks in pieces the cedars of Lebanon. He makes Lebanon leap like a calf, Syrian like a young wild ox. The voice of the Lord strikes with flashes of lightning. The voice of the Lord shakes the desert. The Lord shakes the desert of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord twists the oaks and strips the forest bare, and all his temple, and in his temple all cry glory. The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. My mouth feels all little.
I know mine too.
Want some Suzy water?
No, thank you. In fact, I'm going to have to make a pit stop here in a few minutes. You guys will have to take over for about 20 seconds. Small bladder. You know, I'm getting old.
When you go outside, you'll be right back in.
Yeah. Okay, do you have that verse, Levi?
Yeah. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not in my presence only, but how much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling.
Okay, that's what Ben had quoted just now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Watchman says Matthew 10:28, and then as I search through the scriptures and understand in life, I've realized that I must be patient and receive our rewards if we've gained them at the end of all things and not before.
And I'm going to ask a question to you, Levi and Ben and Lisa, real quick while I go out and go tinkle. But what thing in your life has God displayed Himself to you, and how has He manifested Himself in your guys' life to make Himself real? Let's say, I mean, you know, like some kind of an event, something that took place in your life that really shook you, and kind of showed you that God was real and God is, you know, much bigger than maybe first realized. I'll let you guys take it over for a minute.
Levi, I want to go first.
I mean, you can look around and you can look at this atmosphere, look at the trees, look at your surroundings, and realize that there's something bigger out there. I mean, I sometimes look up and there's a big old bubble around us, and it's just I don't know. I can't remember where the verse was, but it was and I can't remember who it was in the Bible, but he would actually look at his hands, and he would just stare at his hands, and he was like, you know, he was in, he couldn't believe, you know, he's got 5 fingers, he's got 2 eyes, he's got a mouth, he's got a nose, and what verse was that? I can't remember. We were talking about that the other day, weren't we?
Yeah.
Who was that in the Bible? I'm trying to remember. But anyway, yeah, no, it's crazy when you just look around. People are just temporarily blinded in this world, and I'm gonna try to find a verse when my papa gets back so I can read it. Something we were talking.
Was he in like
time.
awe of creation in regards to himself?
What was that, Ben?
This guy that Levi's talking about, and whatnot, was he in awe? Is that kind of the context?
It kind of broke up a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're having some audio issues. I don't know if there might be at your end, Ben. You're kind of cutting in and out just a little bit.
Yeah.
Your internet connection too. All right, I didn't hear those answers, so I'll have to I'm just going to move on. So God is just. God is the judge. Now, here's the part that, you know, to me, fear plays a role, because if God is going to judge me, if I know my life is in His hands, then that frightens me, especially knowing who God is and He holds my life in the balance of His hands. And yes, everybody talks about how God is loving, and, you know, thankfully that is the actual description of who God is God is love, and that we know that He loves us because of what He done for us, and He's displayed that for the whole world, you know, as a demonstration of His love, and that sacrifice also satisfied the demands of the law. But there is, and I think there should be, a healthy fear of who God is, and what power He yields over us. Now, some would even argue that I don't know, how am I trying to formulate this? That maybe we shouldn't fear God, you know, and I guess there is good reason for that as well, because the Bible tells us perfect love casts out all fear. Uh, but yeah, I'm trying to formulate a thought. I'm not 100% sure I'm getting it.
I wanted to read this comment. Lily Committee General says happy Sabbath from Vancouver. Levi, you like politics and stuff like that? There's a protest in Tusk, Poland. And then Watchman says people don't realize we are only but a vapor passing through. I love that because it makes you really think. And then a general good morning to everybody. And then Jesus will judge the individuals, for God is now judging the nations.
Well, I want to make a comment on that. So Philippians 2 verse 12, what we just read, the next verse 13 says, for it is God which worketh in you both to do, or to will and to do of his good pleasure. And as a Christian, that's really comforting, that my judge is the one who changes me, is the one who works in my heart and in my mind to get me to that place where I am able to be judged. That's just it's a comfort to me, and it casts that kind of thing, casts out fear. At least in me, it does.
So that's a good point, Ben. If we have the proper faith and we know that Jesus died on our behalf, and that when we're judged, it's not us that's being judged, but it's Jesus who's righteous that's being judged in our place, that should dispel our fears. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So first, God delivers his people from the wicked. And we could look up Psalms 90. There is a million verses in this lesson. I mean, literally a lot. And I love lessons like this, but unfortunately, due to time, we're already half an hour in, and we haven't even gotten to Wednesdays yet. And I'm kind of going through it pretty fast. But Psalms 97:10, Psalms 146:9, and he crowns the humble with salvation. Second, the unrepentant wicked are destroyed forever. Some Psalms prophetically describe the uselessness of human weapons against the divine judge. The Lord is also a forgiving God, although he punishes people's misdeeds. God's people, not only the wicked, shall give an account to God. But this goes back to what we were talking about, you know, the reward of the righteous versus the reward of the wicked. God delivers his people from the wicked. Have you guys ever had a situation where God has delivered you? Have you guys ever had because we're looking in the world theater right now, and it seems like wickedness reigns, doesn't it? It seems like the whole world is full of wickedness. You can see a lot of good things taking place too, but overall, just terrible destruction from one end of the earth to the other. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
Your brother said hi, him and his wifey.
Oh, how's it going, Damien and Joanna? Oh man, I got it wrong. It's either Joanne or Joanna. I get that one every time.
We're just a mess this morning.
Not the other. Anyways, nice to see you guys here. We'll just call her Joe. I know Joe's a safe one.
So repeat that.
Your question?
Yeah.
Well, the destruction of the wicked. So God protects. How does that go? God delivers his people from the wicked. Right? Do you guys feel like? I mean, what's a good example of perhaps being delivered from the wicked that maybe you have in your life? There's a little bit of a reverb in the ear set here because of the way the audio is all set up, and it's making it difficult to actually talk. That's why I'm kind of stumbling a little bit here.
I'd like to answer that question. In my life, when I think of what my deliverance has been like, my experience has kind of been that as I've adopted the word into my mind and into my heart and into my life, there has been a ripple effect. I don't end up in the same depths of depression, or I don't end up having to suffer the consequences of my actions because my actions have changed, because my heart has changed and my mind has changed. I don't see things the same way. I think that all comes back to, when it talks about the Word was God, and that in, I think, Revelation, it says that the Lord, what does it say? He esteems the Word above all his character, something like that, insinuating that, God is the Word and the Word is God, right? And when the Word enters into our heart through, God's working, like we just read in Philippians, God's the one who does the work. When we open ourselves up for the Word to be put in us, it grows. And that has an effect on the world around us, because now we're living as he designed us to live. He designed this world and he designed us. And when we realign with his intended, method of living, when we realign with creation, there's an effect there. In my mind, when I think of, for instance, if you were to take an ibuprofen and you were to consume it, it's going to create a reaction in your body. I don't see that as God's direct intervention or his direct influence in the situation. It's not that I take a pill and God makes that ibuprofen work inside my body to do what it does. That's how he designed it. Not to take ibuprofen, I don't think that's what he designed for us to do. But the fact that there's a reaction there it's just part of the design. You throw a wrench into an engine, right? And it gets all bound up and messed up. Well, that wrench wasn't designed to be thrown into that engine. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it actually does. Yeah, God has designed us a certain way where we're reactionary creatures, and so we can give him glory, not necessarily because we took the ibuprofen and made our headache go away, but because our body responds to chemical impulses, And of course, that opens up the whole discussion on chemicals and their uses and whether they're good or bad. And
well, even that, I think in the Bible, it's talking to people, or it seems like when I read verses in the Bible, it seems like often it's saying that God has a direct, he's very involved, which I believe he is. But I think there's things that we do, and then there's a reaction, and we think, oh, God is punishing me. And it's like, no, you're just not in line with how he designed things. So of course there's going to be a negative reaction. And we can't say that is God, because he is the creator, but I don't think he is punishing me like I would punish my own kid. For instance, I could let my kid put his hand on the stove. That's a well-used imagery, but that would be punishment in and of itself. But I didn't do that.
Blame God afterwards.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, yeah, exactly. My son's like, oh, you burnt my hand. No, I didn't do no such thing. You burnt your hand. But then there's the time where, sometimes your kid needs a swatting, right? That would be direct. And I think God works in both ways. He lets us reap the reward of the consequence of our actions, but he also directly interacts with us. But the Bible does make it seem like every single thing is God's direct interaction with us. And I think that's just possibly to try and convey something. Like it wasn't worth explaining that, or maybe it was already understood that when we do something, this makes me think of like wrath, right? Have you heard the explanation of wrath? That wrath is you stepping outside of God's like life-giving umbrella, quote unquote. That it's not him actually like killing people or destroying nations, but when someone walks outside of his goodwill, that's when someone is experiencing the wrath, quote unquote, of God.
Well, it's observable with our children. Sometimes we got to let our kids skin their knees. You know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously, we don't let our kids play in traffic. We have to intervene just to save their lives, right? Or because that's not a lesson that they're going to be able to take into their adulthood. But I mean, if you've told them not to do something, I remember when Levi here, Mr. Levi, he. I was trying to teach him about electricity, and we just set up electric fence. And Levi would do the opposite of everything you told him to do. And I told him not to touch the electric fence.
And long story short, I'm a good kid now.
Fast forward.
And right when I told him not to touch the electric fence, I knew he was going to do it. And sure enough, he went and touched the electric fence as soon as I turned my back, and you could hear the zap, and then he started to cry. And I thought it was funny, which that was where I went wrong, is because I laughed. And then so he thought, oh, this is good attention. So then he kept touching it, and the whole lesson went out the window. But just because we know something's going to happen doesn't mean that we made it happen. I guess that's the point of what I'm trying to say. And maybe that's how God operates too. He allows things to happen. You want to read some comments there, Lisa?
Yeah, your brother says Joe works for her name. And the final hope, this is Watchman, the final hope is Revelation 21 to be in the kingdom. And some will grow, but some will wither away. And Matthew 13:4-9 is talking about what we were talking about. And there is a calling. And then Matthew 22:14.
Okay. So
You can look those up.
okay, yeah, there's a lot of verses, and there's a lot of verses in the lesson too. Okay, the theme of God's judgments prompts a significant question. How can God's people have peace when God and assurance of salvation at the time of judgment? Okay, let me read that again. The theme of God's judgment prompts a significant question. How can God's people have peace with God and assurance of salvation at the time of judgment? So when we're being judged, I mean, because I was just talking about that, how that evokes fear with me, the judgment, right? How can we have peace? And I think we kind of already talked about this a little bit. Maybe we can expound on it a little bit more. What's the thing that brings us peace thinking of God's judgment?
Well, like I said, that Jesus is the one working in my heart. And he's the one planting the word within me. And so there's going to be a change in my character, and in my actions, and in the effect that has around me. But this is a continual process, and I think that that's where grace comes in, is because I'm not perfect now. And we could talk about whether when Jesus comes, whether we'll be like fully ready, fully sinless. There is that whole concept. But I just know that right now, while I'm not perfect, God is He is working on me. He is shaping me. And where I fall short, that's where his grace is. So that just completely eradicates fear in my life. Not that it doesn't come back up, but those are the things I have to remember.
Okay, so if we're living wickedly, maybe we should fear, but the wicked don't fear God, but the righteous do fear God because they know the judgment
Mm-hmm.
of God, but the righteous don't fear God ultimately because they know the forgiveness and the love and the grace of God as well. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
this dialectic, if you will. Um, it's interesting how the Bible gives us two different perspectives. On one hand, it says that we should fear God, and on the other hand, it says we shouldn't fear God. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
as a sinner, I should fear God. As a carnal human being, I should fear God. But once I know God and who God is and His long reach with salvation and forgiveness, then the fear goes away.
Well, it's like,
Ricky says hi. And
what's up, Ricky?
Ricky, how you doing, Ricky?
Daryl Calhoun says hi. And Shabbat.
Hi, Daryl. How you doing? Happy Sabbath.
Shabbat.
Happy Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. All right. Thursday's part of the lesson. Your testimonies are very sure. That's the title of Thursday's lesson. And the Lord's supremacy in the world as the sovereign creator, king, and judge has theological implications for the reliability of his testimonies. The testimonies, the Hebrew decree law, refer to the body of laws and ordinances with which the Lord governs the religious and social lives of his people. They are very sure. Now let's talk about the law of God and how that works in our lives. Now, we're often accused of talking too much about God's law, right? But the Bible talks a lot about God's law. And so if the Bible talks about it, I'm going to talk about it. But when we break God's law, there's consequences. And maybe that's the
Yeah.
consequences that it talks about the wicked receive. Because I know in my life is just less harmonious when I break God's law, when I live apart from God's law. And it comes. You're gonna say something?
And in the Ten Commandments, if you look at the Ten Commandments, most of the laws out there right now that we have to abide by in the real world is, you can't steal, you can't murder. I mean, there's a bunch you can do, but you're following half the laws as it is when you're living in the real world. So that's kind of something to think about too. And you know, like with the Ten Commandments, you got 10 commandments that you got to abide by, and when you follow those, you'll realize that your life is just going to be more fulfilled, right? You know, so keep going.
No, that's
Sorry about that.
no. Love the great answer is what that is really. The law is divided into two categories. There's the commandments towards God, you know, the first four, and then the last six are our duty to man. Now, it's interesting that God commands man to enforce the last six commandments. That's thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not commit adultery, honor your mother and your father, and not to covet. Now, all those laws, like Levi was just saying, are basically enforced in our land. And the first four, however, are not. But we know that these end times are coming upon us, and the actual opposite is being switched. They're starting to lean towards enforcing the first four, and as you all know, you mentioned the word politics. In politics today, in the world scene, people aren't following the last six commandments. I mean, they're the stealing, the killing, the lying, the adultery. It's just ran rampant. You know, marriages, kids don't respect their parents. Parents are causing or how's that go in the Bible? They're provoking their kids to anger, and so on and so forth.
What does that mean?
I think I've studied on that verse a lot, actually. I'm not 100% sure what it means, but I think it's, uh, I don't know. Does anybody online kind of have some wisdom on that? I quoted that ignorantly, not knowing the actual meaning of it.
Again, sorry
Well,
about
I
that.
think something that I've seen
But the question's
is
never been
when a parent, rather than
Oh, Ben's
Hang
talking.
on.
Sorry.
it's okay, rather than like bringing peace into a situation, in regards to their kid, they'll rile them up. They'll not address their child appropriately. Um, they're not encouraging like a peaceful reaction
Oh,
or a
yeah.
joyful reaction or the fruit of the spirit. They're basically stomping out the fruit of the spirit in their kid. That's kind of how I see it. Um, yeah.
Good answer, Ben. Thank you
Hmm.
for clarification on that. That we'll have to go back and meditate on that with that in mind. Um,
I always wondered about stoning your children.
oh, the command to stone your children?
Yeah, and then I was thinking, isn't that murder?
Well, the parents, and interestingly, okay, so that's part of the law that we've forgotten as well. The parents had supreme rule over their children according to God, according to biblical principles, to the point of actually commanding them to be put to death. Um, that is not present anymore. The kids are now able to call the police on their parents. Mommy hit me, daddy hit me, whatever. Now, all all of the things set aside, I mean, there's a lot of terrible things happening. Parents are not treating their kids right. Kids are not treating their parents right. Everything's broken, top to bottom. But the foundational fundamentals of God's biblical truth is that parents have supreme rule over their children, even to the point of commanding them to death. But I don't think there was ever a situation in the Bible where it records a parent condemning their child to death. Parents, the natural inclination of a parent is not to put their kid to death. In fact, the natural inclination is to actually um, stand in the way of something harmful that's going to, you know, um, trying to say something won't come out.
Well, the
There's a
parable
verse in the
of the
Bible that
prodigal
talks about the
son.
mother. It says, you know, the mother talks about the mother's love towards her children, and fathers have love towards their children too. In fact, that's what God demonstrated in His perfect love, is how He gave His only begotten Son. And so, we're parents are more likely to intercede. That's the word I was looking for. To intercede on behalf of their parents or their children rather than the other way around. All right, I beat that one to death. Just need to let that one go a long time ago. Oh boy. Do we have any comments?
Oh, um, Watchman says most people treat the Ten Commandments um, as multiple choice rather than the whole. And then there's actually more than two categories. I believe three: religious, ceremonial, and criminal. And then you got Matthew 18:2 through 5. And then sometimes we may be ahead of ourselves and need to go back to be like the children.
Okay. Yeah, and Watchman points out something really important there. There was multiple portions to that law. There was the civil portion.
Hmm.
There was the ceremonial portions of that law. And then we're talking about Mosaic law. And then the Ten Commandments, of course, which was set aside from all the others. Those were pre-existent to all the other laws. The other laws came in because of sin. But the Ten Commandments were always there, just not necessarily codified. They were always there in the character of God. Because when you live, who would want to live in a neighborhood where stealing, I mean, people generally move out of neighborhoods that have a lot of stealing and murder and stuff like that, right? And you're always looking for that good neighborhood to move into. Well, heaven's the perfect neighborhood. All right, so moving right along here. Further thought on Friday's lesson. All right, God's love for man in Steps to Christ. How does the truth that God is love help us better understand the various descriptions of God and His deeds in the Psalms? That was the question. How does the truth that God is love help us better understand the various descriptions of God and his deeds in the Psalms.
Well, just like a parent, it's really important that your child knows they love you so that when you punish them or when you um, put rules on them or anything like that, they don't start to think that you're against them. There needs to be ample reason for them to believe that you have their best intentions at heart and that what you're telling them is for their good. They have to believe that. I know some kids don't believe that. Some kids, um, their parents give them rules and they truly believe that their parent is trying to break them down, trying to prevent their growing. And it's because their parent did not do a good enough job on the love side of things. Um, some parents are like that. Like my dad was very, he had a lot of, I don't want to say rules, but he had a very, very high expectations for me in regards to how I conducted myself within the home and all that kind of stuff. But it never really seemed like it was for my own good. It just seemed like it was because it bothered him or it just wasn't how he wanted it done. As I grow up and, have a better relationship with my father, I know that he really, really wanted good for me. And he just didn't know how to express love towards me. I mean, I think a lot of parents are like that because not a lot of parents have put much thought into what raising a child is gonna require of them. A lot of kids are surprises, and yeah, it's kind of a shame. It doesn't do the kid any good when the kid doesn't believe that what the parent wants for them is the best for them.
Yeah, and there's some lessons to be learned as far as training. Now, as a young parent myself, I know I made a ton of mistakes and raising my boys, and I don't. Did you guys always know that we loved you?
Yeah, of course. We knew you guys are trying to always do right for us, while we're growing up. And, and to add on to that, you only remember what you're punished for when you actually do something bad, you know,
Yeah,
versus when you're not doing something bad, or you think, or yeah, when you know you're not doing something bad and you get punished for that, you're not going to learn over that. Is kind of the way I view it. So
I wanted to say something.
mm,
So I'll just use my set of parents. As- I changed a lot of stuff, but when I started bringing God into our life and was converted into the Christianity, um, then I started to iron out the family and the issues, and it made life a lot better. And so I think if a lot of people out there have like issues with their childhood, if they were to find, you know, um, the Bible and pertain it to their heart and raise their kids accordingly, I think they'd be able to smooth out a lot of stuff and some mental incapacities too that they had and deficiencies that they grew up with.
Biblical principles are the best principles. They do take time to learn, and some of them seem at the time that they're not going to work or they won't be effective, but in the long run, they always work. And that's what makes the Bible so true to me is the everlasting wisdom that is always present in the Bible. And I know when my dad raised us, me and my brother and my sister, we always felt loved. And the interesting thing is that even though my mom and my dad didn't always get along, they never were against one another, and they were always, I think, their central focus was to always let us kids know that we were loved, even though all this chaos was taking place around us. My mom would take us aside. She would tell each one of us that we were her favorite, you know. So we were all walking around proud, thinking we were her favorite. Oh, news, brother. She said that to me, by the way. probably like she said it to you. So we never actually talked about this before.
But
So
we all know
yeah,
that Damien's the favorite.
yeah. But and you know my dad too, and my dad made a lot of mistakes growing up. But he took us all aside and he would apologize for his shortcomings, and so we knew he was very sincere and that he just had issues in his life, and that's sort of how I wished, or you know, that I hope my kids, you know, look at things now, is that you know, looking back they realize that I've made mistakes and that, you know, I'm sorry for those mistakes and all. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, Watchman says, I think a lot of children are raising themselves these days, and I tend to agree, because as soon as they reach a certain age, they get a phone, and then they're quiet, and they're slink off into their little own world, and they are raising themselves. Other people are heavily influencing them through their eyes and their ears, and there's a click, and they follow that click. You know, whatever is new and fascinating and exciting, they're doing it.
Well, that's one of the mistakes that we made early on as parents is we put our kids in front of video games. We put them, you know, under the you know, in front of the babysitter and stuff like that, and then, you know, schools. And that's another issue. But
Your brother says he is the favorite.
I knew it. I knew it. Oh, I love you, brother. Any final thoughts, Ben?
I don't think so.
I like the beard.
Thank you.
Yeah, the beard looks good on you, man. And well, we got about 2 minutes left here, so I just like to thank everybody for watching the podcast this morning. I don't know how the sound quality is coming across until I watch it later, so hopefully it wasn't too terrible. I know there's a little reverb that I'm hearing in my headphones. I don't know if you guys are picking up on that too. We had some issues in the beginning of the podcast, and where there, you know, but this was kind of something brand new. We've done the podcast here in the home studio before, but we've never had a guest, so we've got some bugs to work out. And anyways, we just ask that you guys will all give us a thumbs up and subscribe, or consider subscribing if you haven't already. And we have Sabbath school every Sabbath morning at 9 o'clock Mountain Time. So also check out our prophecy updates. And thanks, Lisa. Thank you, Ben, for joining us.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Levi.
Ricky says it's not that bad.
What's not that bad? The sound?
I guess.
It must be the sound. Well, thanks, Ricky. All right. We missed you today, Ricky. Hope you, well, we all hope we're back in church next Sabbath. So we hope this weather don't last too long. Like I said, minus 44 this morning, guys. It was pretty chilly. So, all right. God bless, and we'll see you guys next
Wait,
Sabbath.
we should pray before we go.
Oh, yes. Yes. Lisa, don't end it. Did you kick off for Ben?
I think I did.
Did you kick off for Ben?
I think I did.